Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the second episode. I guess you can call this the second, even though the first one was pilot, but, you know, there isn't like a second pilot. Co-pilot? The co-pilot episode of the Living Legends of the Living Legends podcast. No, so this is episode 2. This is going to be, just to sate your curiosity, this isn't going to be quite as long as the first one. At least we're not going to try to make it as long as the first one, but we still have a lot to talk about. So once again, this is basically the one-stop shop, the weekly check-in for all things Flesh and Blood, new in the world of Wraith. I am Bill from the Spike Feeders. I'm going to be the host for this episode, and joining me, as always, is Kel from Red Zone Rogue. Say hi, Kel.
Hi, Kel. No, I mean I had to. It's the lowest hanging fruit of all time. Hello.
I'm never going to ask you to do that again.
Hello. My name is Kel, also known as Red Zone Rogue, and yeah, I think this is gonna be a fun episode.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a spicy topic today that has a lot of discourse around it right now. Yes. But also joining us is Az from Go Again Gaming.
Hello, sir. I'm present in the room. Can you see me?
Perfect.
Here's my hand,
is your hand
waving.
Up?
It is indeed. Can I speak?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Az from Go Again Gaming, and yeah, it's going to be a good one. Yeah, it's a hot topic for now, for sure. So yeah, looking forward to speaking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all have some pretty interesting thoughts. Before we get into that, though, just to sort of lead ourselves in and our viewers in, let's talk about something that happened this week for us personally for the world of Flesh and Blood. I think that would be cool, just to, you know, it humanizes us a little bit. Like we are still playing the game. We're not just commenting on things that are happening. But yeah, I actually today just judged our ProQuest event. I feel like it's still not completely solidified in my mind, because when I woke up today, I didn't think that I was going to be. I thought that our event was going to have enough people, but we actually only had 8 people show up, including the person who was initially going to judge. So in order for it to fire, my LGS owner frantically called me and said, "Hey, we really need somebody to judge this event. Are you available?" I wasn't even in the city at the time that I got the call. But yeah, ended up making it work. A little bit frantic, but it ended up being really cool. This was the second big event, the second ProQuest that I've actually judged. And it's also, as a fun fact, the second time that Alevia has made it to the final table.
Ooh.
Yeah,
nice.
We have a local player, Andrew Carl. There's an Adam and an Andrew Carl. I hope I'm not doxing them. You can see these people, you know, on our on the deck lists and stuff. But they're brothers that come to the event, and they always come the same time, and I always get them mixed up. I'm so sorry if you guys are listening, but I believe it was Andrew Carl. Plays Levia, and even though there were only 8 people, so he hit top 8, he actually got to the finals. It was him versus the person who ended up winning. And in our first ProQuest, where we had, I think, 16 people come out, so we actually did have a cut to top 8, he made the top 8 of that too, and maybe even the top 4. He's just a very consistent Levia player.
Did you guys see that Levia ended up winning a ProQuest in like
yeah?
I don't remember where it was exactly.
Taiwan, wasn't it? Taiwan.
Taiwan.
Yeah.
Levia's gonna get some Living Legend points, which is pretty great.
Just like unexpected, but
she's crawled herself out of the Azalea tier.
Yeah. Now it's just Azalea, sadly, sitting at the bottom.
We can do this.
Sad.
But yeah, so that was all my excitement sort of wrapped up into a single day for Flesh and Blood. I'm gonna throw it over to Az. What has gone on with you this week?
I'll mention something that obviously we are all involved in, and that's the next UPF video that I'm currently editing with us 3 and Mr. Stephen DM Armada in it as well. Been working on that, and that's pretty much all I've had time for, because I'm making that a priority. So anyone who's listening to this now or in the future, whether that game is up or not, look out for it, 'cause it's going to be a good one. It's the longest one we've done so far, but there's some ridiculous meme decks in there. So can't wait to showcase that to everybody, because there's going to be some ridiculous interactions. So watch out for that. It's good fun.
Yeah,
nice.
So
play
far,
more UPF, folks.
So far, all of our UPF games have been phenomenal. So it's hard for us to, at least for me, to be like, oh no, like this game is the best one yet. They're all the best one yet, like consistently.
They are.
They're always just a ton of fun. Stuff happens. I mean, it's just a good group of guys, So
Yeah,
It is.
that helps a lot too.
If I remember right, this one is I'm playing like a meme deck. Az is playing like what looks like a meme deck, but actually just straight up pops off and is nuts. So,
Yeah.
I think it's a really really fun one.
Yeah, and it's one of those things as well because Bill plays Starvo in it, and Starvo, as we know,
That's this one, right?
is not a young hero, but the rules state on the website that you can just do what you want, have fun. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I cleared it with everyone first, and they were okay with it. So.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And last but not least, Kel, what have you been up to?
Yeah. Not super exciting stuff. I've just been doing a lot of like Red Zone Rogue content stuff. So I did my recent Classic Battles review, and I've been prepping for my Uprising spoiler, which is on the 4th. So I think that's actually going to happen before the next episode comes out. So I guess I can talk a little. I'm not going to talk about it, but I'm just prepping for that. So getting all of the audio, the script, the images, trying to convince my partner to maybe do voiceover for it, like she did for Azalea for one of the previous ones, for my Seek and Destroy video. So yeah, it's just been mostly like prepping for videos, making videos, doing classic battle stuff. That's where I've been. Oh, I've also been playing around and testing with decks for the Team Blitz event for the during the Uprising world premiere. So there's a calling alongside that's Team Blitz, and so I have 3 decks in mind that I want to be playing. I've done a deck tech for 2 of them. One I did on Channel Fireball, one on my own channel. One of them's Lexi, one of them's Briar, and then the one that I haven't really done a video on is Dash, like just the aggro Dash. So those are the ones I'm kind of playing around with. So yeah, that's been my week in Flesh and Blood.
Just for the listeners at home that might not know what Team Blitz is, because I'm not familiar with it. How does it work? Like how do you like select who's fighting who, or all that sort of thing? How does it work?
So
or do we not know that yet?
So you go into it's a team event, right? It's going to be you're going to have a 3-person team. Playing against another 3-person team. I do know at least for the one in Las Vegas, I'm not sure if this is going to be happening for Madrid and Sydney, but I know there's going to be, like Channel Fireball is going to have like if you don't have a team, you can go to this place and like form a team of like other people who don't have teams. So you can still like
tavern.
yeah, it's just going to be like a set time where like people can form their team. So I think that's really cool. You don't technically need to have a team ahead of in advance, but I do know that each player needs to be playing a different hero.
Cool.
So you can't have like 3 Oldems or whatever.
No.
And I think that makes it really cool because if there is one deck in particular, Oldhim, that everyone thinks is the best deck, Oldhim, then you still need 2 other people playing other things. So that also means you can't necessarily tech your deck specifically against one hero because there's no guarantee that you get matched up against them. And I'm pretty sure you have your sitting order versus your opponent's sitting order. I think that's how it works. I'm not sure if it's just random, like they just assign you seats. It could be that. But
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, that's what I was thinking. Do you like choose your character to face against the other team? But then how would that work and stuff? So yeah, I guess that's a bit up in the air at the moment. But
yeah, I think there's only 2 ways to go about it. There's either you have your sitting order, like let's say DM Armada is position 1, I'm position 2, and then Jim from FAB TCG Cards, that's our team by the way, is position 3, and then we go up against our opponents who also have their set positions, position 1, position 2.
I see. Right, yeah, okay.
Or it's just random. I think those are like the only 2 real ways to do it. But I do know that it's DM Armada was talking about like, oh, I think I'd be better in position whatever, and I'm like, I mean, I don't know the strategy behind it, so go for it. I'm just gonna be jamming some aggro decks and throwing some cards at people. So not literally, but maybe literally.
Yeah.
Just fling them at him Gambit style from the X-Men, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
Just
You got to get your card tossing skills up to snuff.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
But on the back of that, in terms of formats that are sort of up and coming and on people's minds, today the main topic we are going to be talking about Commoner, which is a format that has existed for a while, but just very recently got the official blessing from LSS. And has now a page on their gameplay formats section on their website. I think that there's maybe some amount of misconception. There's, people have some preconceived notions about Commoner right now that hopefully we're able to shed some light on. I mean, it is, just a Flesh and Blood format, and you're still playing Flesh and Blood, so I'm sure you know approximately how it pans out. But in my personal experience from playing it, it is actually significantly different for multiple reasons from current existing formats. And I think that we've all experienced it at least a little bit as a format. So I think we'll have some pretty good discussion about it in general.
Yeah, definitely.
And I guess just to start off, much like we did with Team Blitz, let's just talk about what Commoner is to start. So it is Blitz format. So if you're familiar with Blitz already, you have young heroes that you can use. You have a 40 card deck that is static 40 cards, can't be any more or less. And of that 40 cards, you can only include common cards in your deck. And that includes cards that were printed at common at one point. So they don't have to consistently be printed at common. Their example here is in the Katsu Hero deck, back from a million years ago. Lunging Press was initially printed as a common, but in Crucible of War it was reprinted and they put it in the rare slot. You're still able to play Lunging Press even if you only have a rare version. It counts as a common card in the pool. For your equipment and for your hero, for your equipment and for your hero, you can have rares, but for your equipment you can only have up to 2 rares. And then your hero, you can have any young hero as long as it is young.
Yep. Can you have majestic young heroes?
You cannot. This says specifically one hero card can be rare or common.
Cool. So yeah, just keep in mind no Valda and no Genus, I think, is basically what that means right now.
Yeah, and no Icelander.
Until Uprising.
Yes, and no Shiana.
Oh yeah, no Shiana too. Yeah.
But yeah, everybody else is fair game. Specifically Benji, Kasai, all of the Crucible of War young heroes. Those were all rares, so you can play those. So that feels a little bit better instead of only being locked into the common ones. But yeah, so that's really the whole thing. I mean, as I said with Blitz. The Blitz structure of it. It's a 40 card deck with a maximum of 2 copies of each unique card that are all commons. So something that is also interesting, that is going to be something that we're going to be talking about in general, is currently, because they just recently implemented this as a quote unquote official format, there isn't a ban list. So you are able to play any card that fits within the rules that I just stated. As we may or may not know, there are cards that have been deemed too powerful and are put on the ban list that are also commons, and those are too powerful in the regular constructed formats where you have access to majestics and legendaries. Yeah. So I think before we get into that, that's a little bit too much of a dive. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. First of all, let's just open up. How do you guys feel about Commoner as a format? Just in general, what are your thoughts? Do you like playing it? Do you not like playing it? Is it better than a certain format or worse? I'm interested to see what you guys feel about it.
Yeah, I can go ahead. I really like Commoner. I have 10 Commoner decks. It's the easiest format to build because if you just have a ton of bulk, you can just throw whatever together. It's quite easy. It's also very cheap. So if you don't have a lot of bulk, you can just buy the singles for sometimes pennies actually, and it's very affordable. That's not to say that it is not competitive, and we can talk about that a little bit later, but it's very affordable and it's fun, and you're playing with very well-tuned decks. So even though it's affordable. You're not playing with a bunch of jank, right? It's not like a weird, jank format. The commons in Flesh and Blood are good, and the decks in Commoner, like the really tuned ones, are very good. There are some outlying heroes, obviously, as there are going to be for any format. There's going to be best decks, but I think you have a lot of options in terms of deck building and hero selection, more so than you might think. Like, for example, I personally think, I mean, this is not super contentious, but Briar is very good, Ira is very good, but also just old school Bravo's pretty good. Like Angel Prism is pretty good. So I like Commoner quite a bit. The only real downside of it is since you can't play with rares or higher in your main deck, some strategies are just not possible. Like I wanted to make an OTK Viserai deck, and there's just like not enough rune chant generating cards at common to do that. You just can't do that. But
yeah, you have like Read the Runes, and that's kind of it, I think.
Yeah,
like there are some things that incidentally create rune chants, but it's not a huge amount.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not a lot. There's like, yeah, it's basically Read the Runes, and then there's some other ones like Bloodspill Invocation, but those require like other things. I don't know. It's just not possible. So that's like the big downside, just because of the smaller card pool. Some strategies are just not viable, but I still really like it.
It's like Prism as well. He just doesn't have many of the spectral shield generators. Doesn't have access to prismatic shield and stuff. So some heroes do suffer on certain strategies, which I think is a bit of a shame.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a really, really good format. I think it's a fantastic way to introduce people to the game. And finally, after a year of being into Flesh and Blood, I'm starting a little local scene. It's going to be very small to begin with, but this is the format that I'm going to use to just get people to play.
Yeah, man.
Experience some cards, put some jank decks. Well, not jank decks, but cohesive decks together with commoners. With common cards, and just get people playing. And obviously, if they want to progress, they can start looking at the rares and the majestics, and they'll be able to then see the value that they can gain and the reason why they're rare and better. So I think it's a great way for people to enter the game. But I think my initial thoughts on it were not what I expected this format to be. But I think that's just me in general, just expecting things like this to potentially be about theme and flavor when it's not. So that's just my own mindset. But we can get into that later, because there's a good question about that sort of thing. But yeah, as an entry point, I think it's great, a great format.
Yeah.
I think.
Oh, go ahead. I was just gonna say, as a comment, reminded me of what I like most about it. In that, if you are playing with someone new and you loan them a commoner deck and they like it, you can just be like, keep it. It cost me like a couple bucks. You just keep the deck. Like, I love that.
Yeah,
exactly.
The ease at which you can create like a commoner battle box, where it's just something that you bring to if you're hanging out with some friends for like a board game night or something, you could bring it along and be like, hey, does anybody want to learn this game? Or if they're already into it, be like, hey, does anybody want to jam some commoner? And like exactly like you said, it's the sort of thing where you don't feel bad about being like, here, yeah, you can, if you like it, you can just have that deck and then we can play more later. I think that especially like you said, as when you're putting together a local scene, which is a question that we had last week as well about creating your local scene, it is so much easier to get people to make that jump if you're able to give them an actual starting point by saying, you can try out this deck if the flavor appeals to you. If you like this, then you can, it is your deck. You can like look at it as much as you want. You can change it. You can, as you said, like buy majestics and increase the overall power level and potential value that way. But having that, especially for a trading card game in general, there are so many decisions to make even before you started playing the game. And it can get overwhelming even for a relatively, young and small game like Flesh and Blood is currently. But taking away that and saying, here is your concrete starting point can be really, really helpful to actually get people through the door and start enjoying the game. So
exactly, and I don't know where this is going to go with regards to events and stuff, because with Commoner, it doesn't matter what your budget is; anyone can play at a high level. as well, because you don't have to buy the certain pieces. So I don't know whether this was a question or not, but I think the budget and the cost is another thing that this really does help people with, if that is an issue.
No, 100%. Because there is one question that I think, you know what, I'll actually just bring it up like right now, honestly, because it is tying into what we're talking about anyway. And I think it's just a great decision or a great discussion point to begin with. So we elicited Twitter for some questions for this episode, and we got one from Patrick Shaw at Pat Smash Good on Twitter. And the question in total is, it seems most of the people that I've seen clamor for Commoner now aren't happy with it. First it was about accessibility, and now it's about speed and power level. Sometimes it feels like FAB will never be casual enough for some in any format. Is Commoner a hit or a miss for you right now? It's a very good question. There's a lot sort of baked into that in general, and that sentiment. I like to start. And this is the same for every single Flesh and Blood format that exists. If you're just starting out with, you know, a small local scene or people at your kitchen table, regardless of what format you're playing, there does exist a best deck. That does not mean that you have to play that best deck in order to be playing Flesh and Blood. Like, I'm not trying to detract from people who do want to play the best deck, but the existence of a competitive angle or a competitive tier in a format does not preclude the existence of other decks, especially when you're first getting started. When you start getting into, like right now, Commoner does not have an actual tournament scene. There aren't constructed events right now for Commoner. So you can define it as a casual event the same way that for any Magic player, you can define Commander as a casual format, where there are absolutely top of the format decks, so much so that they created their own extra thing, CEDH, for the competitive decks. But it is still the same format. So I think outside of there being actual tournaments, I think the format is fine. I think also because they just implemented it and very specifically don't have a ban list, there will, as more tournaments become a thing, there will eventually be a ban list. There are cards that are just too efficient at common, too good for the format in general. But right now, and Kel and I were kind of talking about this, or we were as a group, Az was also there, talking about this.
I don't know if I was.
Yeah, no, just before we actually started, that the fact that there isn't a ban list right now is actually kind of cool. Yeah. Because for people who didn't get a chance to play with Ball Lightning or Seeds of Agony, I'm certain that there are new players out there that look at the ban list right now and they see Seeds of Agony and they read it and they're like, why? Why is this card banned? Like, it's so... It's a 0 cost. It adds 1 damage. Like, it doesn't feel like it does anything. Yeah. But when you play with it, you understand. And I think right now, this is sort of the best environment to show that off in like a real actual format that isn't just kitchen table, play whatever you want.
Yeah.
So I think that Commoner... Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's the Wild West, man. Like, you can kind of do what you want. It's kind of like Ultimate Pit Fight in that regards, where it's just kind of like, you just do whatever you want right now.
Yeah. It's like... I don't want to sort of deride anybody for having this mindset, because obviously the point of having a competitive card game, trading card game, is to theory craft what the most consistent, what the best deck in the format is. And at this point in time, I can absolutely concede that there is a best deck for Commoner, or a couple of best decks, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do that, especially if it comes with the detriment of the person you're playing with that also wants to play Commoner not having fun. To me right now, because there isn't prizing for any of these, I think that having fun is kind of more paramount, and the idea of having Commoner as this format where you have the restriction of only playing with common cards, it's a space worth exploring, and it doesn't mean that you have to always go, okay, I'm only going to build Ira decks for Commoner, or I'm only going to build Briar, and I'm going to run 6 Ball Lightning in every single deck. Like, you can, absolutely you can. But if it's more about having a welcoming environment for new players to actually grow your player group, I think that maybe put the ball lightnings away, or maybe put them into a Lexi deck that doesn't utilize them quite as efficiently as Briar would. But the frame that's in place for Commoner right now, I think, is exceptional. I think it's very, very good, and it's something that Flesh and Blood desperately needs.
Yeah. I'm gonna straw man a little bit because I know this is gonna pop up in the comments.
Absolutely.
There are some commoner events with prizing, but these are at larger events like the Pro Tour and Callings. So there was some commoner events that actually sold out, which is amazing, at the Pro Tour that did have prizing. So there is that, but I think all of Bill's points still stand. It's all about the situation that you're in and where you're playing commoner, right? If you're signing up to go to an event that has prizing, you should expect people to be spiking it, right? You should expect people to be trying to win because they want to win. But if you're just rolling down to your LGS with your little pack of commoner decks to, give to someone to try for the first time, maybe not give them Ball Lightning Briar, or play against, play with your Ball Lightning Briar deck. Maybe play something a little more fun. So. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, it is ultimately, I think, all about context as well, because if they're like, I did say, there aren't events with prizing, but obviously there are. They're not the standard way to play commoner, because it's only at these larger events, and because you're paying for, I assume, entry and also prizing, there's obviously just that implication of, okay, well, people are going to want the prizing, and it's like that again for every format, like for Blitz, for CC, even for outside of Flesh and Blood. That's just a thing. It's a phenomenon. So with what we have now, and a lot of the detraction from Flesh and Blood in general being, oh well, it's too expensive as a game. I think that Commoner is, like, because it's still an absolutely playable format where the decks feel good to play, while also being very inexpensive and easy to get into. I think it is like maybe the starting point that Flesh and Blood really desperately needs. So it's perfect, in my opinion. I really, really like Commoner.
Yeah. Exactly. I do want to touch on one thing that Patrick Shaw said. He says, sometimes it feels like FAB will never be casual enough for some in any format. That is a difficult thing to say, because what casual means different things to a lot of people. I have a feeling that some of the people who want casual as to mean not competitive and, janky, like to be able to play with like janky, fun, whatever pile you have, you might just be wanting to wait until something like the PvE comes out next year, right? That might be your jam, rather than trying to play against, all of the competitive people at your LGS.
Yeah, exactly. When I first saw Commoner, I was like overjoyed because, out of the three of us here, I'm probably the jankiest. Love the flavor, love the theme, but a rubbish deck builder in general. So when I first saw Commoner, I was like, oh yes, this is the format for me. This is going to be pure jank, pure. I can just use and experiment with all types of different decks. But ultimately, that's not gonna be the format for me, I don't think, with regards to that, because my casual outlook on the game, this isn't going to be that. So I think my perspective of it was quite skewed to begin with. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it evolves. But yeah, it's just the way the game works. It's 1-on-1, and especially when you have you put prizes in it as well. It's going to be as you say, the spikes. Do sort of rise to those occasions, don't they? So
yeah. I mean, like, accessible doesn't mean weak. It just means the cards are cheap.
Yeah, exactly.
And because they're cheap doesn't also mean that they're weak. Like, you can get Scar for 5 cents or whatever. I don't know how much it is. It's just a common, and it's really good. And same with like ball lightnings. How much is a ball lightning? Like, I don't know, 10 cents or something. Like, just because it's cheap doesn't mean it's weak.
Yeah, that's like largely that's one of the things that I really appreciate about Flesh and Blood, and I think Commoner is kind of a love letter to that in a way that, especially coming from Magic, where you look at all these sets that are designed for draft environments, and you have these like really underrate commons that you have to play because it's a draft format. Flesh and Blood doesn't doesn't necessarily have that same requirement, because I mean it's a different resource system in general, so kind of apples and oranges. But the fact that you look at commons, and commons are legitimately playable. Like you look at some of them, like, you know, red Sink Below, red Fate Foreseen. Those are like maybe the best defense reactions in the game. Like obviously there are some that are situationally better.
I can't think of a single. This is good. Someone's gonna find the counter to this. I can't think of a single majestic defense reaction that is like just strictly better than Sink Below, Fate Foreseen, or Unmovable, right?
Yeah, like I mean, the only one that I can think of right now, much to my chagrin, is just Guardian of the Shadow Realm, which I would absolutely play a playset of Sink Below and Fate Foreseen over playing a single Guardian of the Shadow Realm.
Yeah. There's like some that are like pretty good that you see play, like Soul Food, or not Soul Food, Soul Shield. Like the 2/6 block goes into your soul, but like that's super narrow and only goes into light hero decks, and even then you're still paying 2 for 6. So like, I don't know.
So like there are commons in Flesh and Blood that are bad, but I think by weight, I think that commons are more valuable than they are in kind of most other games. Which then, you know, you get to see them shine, especially more in Commoner, because you don't have, you know, the consistency that rares, majestics, legendaries plus that the consistency that those can technically provide. And instead you're relying on commons, you know, ones that you would normally play in a deck, but also sometimes maybe ones that you wouldn't, and they can be just as good or even better in the context. Like it's
I was just thinking what you were saying. Like, I was thinking about the Classic Battles deck, and my favorite card from the Classic Battles box set is a common card. It's a common generic that appears in the Dorinthia deck that is, I think it's called On a Knife Edge. It's a 0-cost yellow pitch card, blocks for 2. It's a non-attack action. It has Go Again, and it says your next sword attack this turn gains Go Again. That's all it does.
Yeah.
And I saw that, and I'm like, this is a common. This is insane for Commoner. Like, this is going to make Viserai and Briar in particular like nuts. This card is gross with Nebula Blade and Rosetta Thorn. And
oh man, Nebula Blade.
Yeah,
didn't even think about that one,
because it's a non-attack, so it already fulfills the non-attack requirement.
Yeah. So
you can go Knife Edge into Nebula Blade, which is
good.
Spicy. So
that's so crazy.
Yeah, you were talking about your rune chant enablers not being there. There we go.
Yeah.
We'll go Nebula Blade tribal.
You can do like mid-range. Like I'm no joke. I kind of want to do like a mid-range Viserai for Commoner now, like using the On a Knife Edge. There's another one too. Yeah. There's another one that's a blue. It's not great. It's kind of like a worse version of the I forget the warrior one it's called. The one that gives a sword Go Again and then reprise draw card. It's like glinting.
Glint the Quicksilver.
Yeah, Glint the Quicksilver. Glint the Quicksilver. I can say it right. I don't know why that was a tongue twister. Yeah, exactly. But okay, so there's another one that just says it's an attack reaction. Target sword attack gains Go Again, and it costs 1, and it pitches for blue. So the fact that it costs 1 is like a kind of meh, but it still gives a sword Go Again, and it's generic.
Generic as well.
Yeah, generic. So
nice.
It's common.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Fantastic.
But yeah, there are so many options that are actually genuinely available in Commoner, and I mean, like I kind of touched on before, where Az says, you know, I don't think this is the format for me because it can get too spiky. Again, I think it's all about context. If you wanted to make a janky Commoner deck, I would absolutely make one to play like against you.
Yeah.
That's the sort of thing, like, because it's not an official, like, you know, a largely official format with consistent tournaments and stuff like that. You can just have like that, and I hate to bring it up outside of Magic, but that Rule 0 discussion where it's like, hey, I have this fun Commoner deck that I'm trying out. Do you have any cool ideas as well? And you can get that sort of creativity. That is a part of this game too, because deck building requires creativity, and you know, if you don't take risks and play a less than optimal deck, you'll never know. Maybe that deck is better than the optimal deck, but you can only know if you actually like give it a chance, you know?
Exactly.
Like it's playtesting.
Yeah.
And if it's not better, then whatever. Who cares? It's still fun. We're still playing a really good game.
Exactly. So yes, I mean I'm a creative mind. I just like putting stupid things together and seeing if they work. And that's just me. But hey ho.
Yeah. Hey man, I built a Battle Mage Kano commoner deck that I did for like a deck tech for Channel Fireball, and the whole point of the deck is to play Moonwish and then use the alternate cost to put Sunkish from your hand on top of the deck, and then use Kano's hero ability to play that at instant speed, thereby drawing you a card and gaining an action point. That's the whole point of the deck.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's what I like to see.
I love it.
I was actually just about to reference the Sunkiss Moonwish deck that kind of slapped us around a little bit on that UPF game.
Yours was Briar and probably just better than my weird jank Kano combo, but still, yeah.
No, that's cool though. That's you'll think. With those sort of things, commoner or otherwise, you're thinking about the hero ability to do something that it's not really meant to do in a certain line in the deck that you want to fulfill. And that's what the creativity is all about. And that's what commoner is going to be able to do, because you can only use certain cards, so you have to think outside the box.
Mm-hmm. And it's again the restrictions breed creativity, is I believe
exactly.
So you're looking at a deck and maybe it has a solved version in Blitz, but without access to all the Majestics and stuff, you're like looking at generic commons that you normally wouldn't have looked at, or just other commons for your class that people have written off because it's not good enough for the other constructed formats. Maybe it's really good in commoner. Like, that does happen. There are cards that are sort of hidden gems because there's that additional restriction.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
It's I think we can we can all agree that commoner is just a really, I think I'm almost 100% positive that commoner is the best way to sort of convince people to start playing the game.
Yeah, I think
before this for me it was Blitz, but I think commoner is just that much better. It's just a no-brainer.
Commoner is great. And what cards? So I was just been thinking as we're talking about this. I mean, if one of the big concerns that a lot of folks are having is that it might be too spiky or unbalanced, and we were talking about this earlier, maybe before we turned on the mics and hit the go button, because that's how podcasts work. What cards do you guys think are on the docket for getting banned? Like, what do you think? Like, once it becomes like a thing and we start seeing bans and suspensions for this format, what do you expect to see? Because I think there's a couple that people expect to see.
There's a couple that come to mind, I believe.
Yes.
I was gonna say, I think Az has some thoughts about this one.
Yeah, well, I think there's obviously I think we did mention it already in this actual audio recording, but ball lightning is obviously one that's extremely oppressive, and we saw it in actual classic constructed play, ripping people apart. Similar to yes, of course, another Runeblade card, a talented one, I may add, in Seeds of Agony. So those are the ones that obviously come to mind. But again, it's as Kel said, the Wild West at the moment. So I guess nothing is solved right now, because I still think if there's rangers in the meta with these hamstring shots that are taxing your first attack, or these ice cards that are giving you frostbite tokens, can people deal with that in commoner? Discarding cards from the hand with on-hit effects from Reek of Corruptions and ice arrows. Can people deal with that amount of interaction? I think ice is going to be a very, very good thing in commoner, because that amount of interaction that they get from starving resources as well as discard effects and on-hit effects could be one of the things that keeps that in check. But I don't know.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say that I agree, because like we were saying, there are commons that are absolutely just above rate in terms of how valuable they are, from a card economy standpoint. For example, we were talking about Sink Below and Fate Foreseen. Maybe one of those, maybe having both of them in the format is too strong in terms of a defensive thing. Maybe having, Scar for a Scar and Ravenous Rabble and, these really efficient, aggressive cards, maybe having all of them is, again, too much. But I think you're absolutely right on the money that if this format does shift into a more aggressive one, you know, if we still see Chain with Seeds and Briar with Ball Lightning, I think that having a more controlling style where you're actually actively putting roadblocks in front of your opponent, like I think Frostbites can really help to mitigate that in terms of them being as effective as they can be, because those decks usually tend to run pretty low to the ground anyway. So even if it's just one extra resource, then yeah, you're interacting with them in a negative way for them, but a positive way for you. So.
That's what I think. You know, if people straight away out of the gate think, this is the format where I can play Seeds of Agony and Ball Lightning, you're going to see all of these Chains and Briars come, you know, running out of the traps, and you know what's going to be waiting for them. People should meta a control strategy, and then what happens? You have loads of Rune Blades running into Rangers, and then another deck pops up, and it just naturally evolves from there, I guess, doesn't it? So. Yeah.
Like Oldhim is legal in Commoner, and Oldhim is incredibly good at disrupting your opponent's game plan. So, you know, stuff like that. Think outside the box. I don't know. Like I don't think any of us are. Well, maybe Kel a little bit, but I don't think we're necessarily of the mindset that there shouldn't be a ban list. I think that any healthy format probably does have a ban list, especially when there are so many cards that were printed before Commoner was even a thought. So
that's true.
Some will just be, you know, more like they will be stronger than others, but in general, I think that it can be relatively self-correcting. I guess we'll have to see.
It's still a very young format, right? They've only officially like put it on their website like in the last couple months, so I wouldn't be surprised if we not only see a ban list eventually, but also maybe like official. OP support at the LGS level. So, you know, outside of like the calling events, you know, because those ones aren't those ones are just done by the tournament organizer, but like having official ones at your LGS with prize support, that kind of stuff would do a lot for the format. And, getting a tight ban list around it. As much as I like the Wild West, we have Ultimate Pit Fight for that. Getting a tight ban list to make it more fun for everyone, I think. It will be great in the long run, and I think we could see that happening. You know, I think it's something that they might be looking at. So I think it's cool, and I'm looking forward to it. Because once again, it's really accessible. But also, if you're the kind of card player who just wants to play really powerful decks, you could still do that, and it's still really cheap. So you have like the best of both worlds, right? It's really cheap, and you can just play with good stuff.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I think one of the things that I don't want to assign a thought process to certain people, but the feeling that I get from people who talk about Commoner in, you know, a less than optimal way, I think they have it in their heads that they are playing like, you know, it's like boxing with sock and boppers, you know, like it's the same game, but you're doing like suboptimal things. But I genuinely don't think that's the case for Commoner. I think that the
sock and boppers, man. You got
me. I'm glad that was such an evocative image for you.
Well, it reminds me of my nephew, and he's like in his 20s, and he's going to school for like video game development. So I don't know if he watches this but when he was a little kid, like 3 or 4, he had these Hulk hands. They're like sock and boppers, and when you bashed them together, they were like Hulk smash. And he's like this tiny little kid, and the Hulk hands took up his entire arm, so it just looks like he had fists for arms. And I imagine that's exactly what I imagined. this little tiny kid running up to you, like whacking you with these little Hulk hands. Oh no.
Yeah. So the point is, Commoner is not like that. The decks still very much have like a point and a goal.
Yeah.
They like, it still feels like you're playing an actual game of Flesh and Blood. You're not just, it's not with, you know, the safety on. You are still like, it's still a really tense game of back and forth. Just because it's commons doesn't mean it's any less exciting, really. In general, again, I think that Commoner just does it have some things that could be ironed out? Yeah, but I mean, so does So does every format of every game, I think. I don't think you're ever going to have a format where everybody is 100% happy with absolutely everything that's going on in it. But with that being said, I think that Commoner is, like, I've said it a million times, and I'm just going to keep saying it. Commoner is something that Flesh and Blood needs. And its current iteration is still very good. So anyway, without belaboring that point as much, there is still one more question that I did want to chat about. We could still pick a couple of others if we come across any that really pique our interest, but one that I liked, because we've been talking about how cool and fun and powerful Commoner is as a format. We do have a question from, and excuse me for the pronunciation, but Ujiguchi, I believe. Ujiguchi69 on Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
What heroes are the worst in Commoner? They've seen very many videos about the best. How about the worst? And, I mean, we did kind of touch on that a little bit before, where some heroes just kind of aren't built for that format, where, you know, a lot of their stuff is built into, you know, the rares or the majestics, where they piece together a certain strategy really effectively. The one that I have, this is purely academic for this guess. I don't know if this deck is actually unplayable. It could turn out to be, and I would love to be proven wrong that it is playable, but I think just because of how Katsu is built in terms of his combo lines being, like, the beginners of the combo lines are commons. Usually the follow-ups are rares. Yeah. So you're not really able to leverage his ability as much. You still can, because there are still combo cards at common, but you're not able to get the ultimate payoff of being able to upgrade each of your combo lines and then end with the finisher.
Yeah. You're basically just like leg tap into Rising Knee Thrust, and that's it.
Yeah, like, there are still obviously things that you can do that make the deck like an efficient aggro deck, because, you know, ninjas just have pretty efficient attacks as it is. But, you know, you're not able to play Mugenshi Release or Lord of Wind or, you know, really anything past that, like Rushing River and Whelming Ghost Wave is a common. I'm just trying to remember every single card. But, you know, a lot of the ninja combo cards in those lines, they start with a common and then they go into rares. So you're pretty shut off from that. But that's not necessarily due to a card quality thing. It's just based on how the cards have been printed for Ninja, which is kind of unfortunate. But
what we do know about that though is if you do a leg tap and a knee thrust, if you continuously do that, like on a fighting game where you spam the buttons, like leg tap, knee thrust, leg tap, knee thrust, leg tap, knee thrust, you know, they're not going to be able to get out of it. So I would implement that strategy in Flesh and Blood.
Yeah, no, you always do. My strategy for every single Street Fighter game is crouch kick.
Yeah. Sweep, do the leg sweep.
Yeah, or just Hadouken, you know, Hadouken.
Spam it, yeah.
Or if you're Blanca, just sit there electrocuting yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Let them come to you.
Yeah, exactly. I think that has a, you know, people do talk about Flesh and Blood as though it was like a fighting game, and I think, you know, we could probably come up with that strategy.
Yeah, your middle school arcade tricks, you know, just crouch and spam light kick, just in the corner, get him.
Yeah, but yeah, Az, what's your vote for worst commoner hero?
Kavdayan.
That is actually very obvious. That, like, to me, now that you've said it, I'm like, yeah, obviously. but yeah, elaborate, please.
He doesn't have access to cash in, so he can't use any coppers at all.
I mean, he can pay 4 resources to draw a card.
So he's just sat there gaining money from his skin trade, and he just can't do anything with it.
Yeah, that's a good point. All of the Everfest cards are like rare, right? That care about coppers.
Yeah, a lot of them are. Yeah.
Jeez, yeah, Kavdayan has the short end of the stick here. That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Dang. I mean, he kind of does in other formats.
I was going to be like, he's not really great in many formats anyway, but
yeah. You always knew my answer would be stupid, right?
No, I mean, that's a real answer. That's absolutely a real answer.
Fantastic.
I mean, let me see your stupid answer and raise you with the most spicy of choices.
Go on,
Datadol.
Oh, I mean, yeah.
I mean, come on, think of the Datadol with only commons. Like, what are you doing?
Ooh,
what are you doing?
do you even have access to enough mechanologist cards for that to be a consistent deck?
Oh, brilliant.
I'm sure you would have to add non-mechanologist cards, and then you'd be whiffing on boosts. You only have 3 cards in your that you can ever access, and you don't have the microprocessor, which people have pretty much agreed has single-handedly made Datadoll a remotely playable hero.
Remotely,
absolutely.
And here's the kicker, right? You're boosting, the whole point is you're boosting into items that you get for basically for free. What items at common are you even boosting into?
God,
optical monocle.
That is value.
What are you boosting into? I think.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the induction chamber or whatever is a super rare. There's the pounder that's just a majestic.
That's a majestic. There's also, what is that, conduction something, the one that gives it there's one item that gives an attack dominate, and another one that gives it when this hits put it on the bottom, but both of those are rares, I think.
I think you might be right. It was one of them common. There's one that gives you, man, this shows our knowledge on mechanologist ones. Mechanologist cards. I know there's one that when you boost you get a resource. There's one that's when you boost you get dominate.
Hyperdriver and convection amplifier, I think.
Yeah, I think one of those is common. I don't remember which. Maybe both, but I don't remember. But I mean, if that's your top end, then good luck.
Yeah, there's not much else going on. Ether Sync, which I mean, you probably wouldn't play Ether Sync anyway.
Oh god, Ether Sync I think is one of the worst cards in the entire game.
Thankfully, it's a rare, so we don't even have to consider it.
You don't even have the option of playing one of the worst cards ever printed.
So Hyperdriver, Optical Monocle, Dissipation Shield.
Yes.
Those are all of the common items.
So Hyperdriver is the one we were thinking about.
Yeah. Hyperdriver you can play, but oh man, that feels bad.
So I think Datadoll's gotta be. I don't know if Cavdane's worse. But I think Datadoll might be worse. I don't know. I'd have to take a look at the pool because Datadoll, you have all these crap cards, but then you also only have a 3-card hand size. So you're
no.
It's just, and you're just at least Cavdane has 4 cards in his hand.
That's true.
He can play with 4 cards. He doesn't have access to mechanologist cards, but if you wanted to try to use Datadoll's ability or leverage it for card advantage, I honestly don't think you even can. Because you can only play a total, because these only come in 1 color, so you can play a total of 6 items in this deck.
6 banger items.
Yeah, 6 banger items, and and then I'm almost positive that you maybe just don't even have enough mechanologist cards to make a boost happen every time guaranteed. I think you would have to supplement with some generic cards.
You might be able to do it because
I guess now with Everfest. I think before Everfest you probably wouldn't be able to. But...
And then you could even put in that back alley break line if you need to get that in there. So.
Which is basically an honorary mechanologist card for boost purposes.
So you could do it.
Yeah.
But I mean
but would you?
Do you want to do it? I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's hard to determine whether Az wins or Kel wins. My answer was just from I think you absolutely can make a playable Katsu deck in Combat.
Oh, for sure. I think
it is just not as it's not quite as complete or rounded as any other Katsu would be, just because you have sort of truncated combo lines. But I think Cavdane and Dash are legitimately unplayable, maybe.
Yeah, pretty. I mean, yeah, I'm thinking for Cavdane. What kind of Cavdane deck? I mean, it would just be all of the best generics, and there's some pretty good ones. But I don't think there's enough good ones to make it into 40 cards. So you're gonna end up playing some Fervent Forerunners and some other random crap to fill it out. I think.
Yeah, you would just have to play, what card is my 45th pick in every other deck, and that's going to be my 18th. That is going right in the deck. That's a 6 of right there.
Yep, and they all block for 2 except for the defense reactions.
That's
pretty bad.
That's unfortunate, but
thinking of sort of
someone should make oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Az. Go ahead.
I was just saying, I was just thinking of Cavdaean Blue Pitch Tribal. Because you have to obviously make use of his activated ability, which is a blue pitch, obviously 3 resources. So you have to activate that every turn, and then have some sort of follow up after that, but be very, very resource heavy.
I would love to see a feature match of Cavdane versus Datadol in Commoner to see who wins. It'd be like one of the most painful games to watch. It's just two players like playing the absolute worst. Just cards.
Like it's a slog, Powell. not because either player is actively trying to elongate the game, but because they just can't close it out.
Yeah,
it's like
absolute slog.
Yeah, because like Datadol has 3 cards, right? And I guess you block with a couple, and you're like, okay, 0 to 60, choose not to boost because I don't have anything else to do. Pass. Like,
okay, activate Cavdane.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's a slog fest back and forth.
Yeah.
Cavdane's just convinced that Datadol is actually a real human being, and he's trying to get the skin, but there is none.
Yeah,
she's
none
I mean, they're both in the same area, right? Metrics in the pits.
True.
Like,
yeah, those are neighbors.
Cavdane lore-wise might know of Datadol. I think Datadol is kind of like sequestered in collecting data. Like Cavdane feels like he might be the kind of person who maybe knows a little secrets here and there.
Yeah, he's probably got his finger on the pulse of the streets, I would assume. Seems like the kind of guy who would.
One thing that this is a completely random tangent, but I think we have a little time for it. That always bothered me about Datadol is it's a card called Datadol, and it's a robot, but it's like dumber than the average. It's like dumber than Reinar. Like that doesn't make any sense to me lore-wise. It's called Datadol. Shouldn't it have like more intellect? And it's a freaking robot. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just a little thing that's always stuck with me. I don't know why.
She has these like high capacity cables sticking out every which way from her. Like you'd think that one of those is connecting to like a server or something where she could have access to a little bit more information. But no, Brute way smarter. Brute go smash.
Yeah, like freaking KO is like a runt, a brute runt who all he wants to do is like punch dragons and stuff. And he's got more intellect than this robot whose only existence is to like process and collect data. Like bro, come on.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I think that a Cavdane versus Datadol match needs to happen, but I don't know if anybody is like has the fortitude to actually do it.
To actually consume it.
I mean, now that I've said that, we'll probably have to do it at some point. I think that's just going to be a given.
Have to start brewing some spicy Datadol tech. Watch it roll up with Datadol. It's not even like you have like no mech cards. It's just all generics.
Just an aggro deck.
Yeah.
It's just the Cavdane deck mirror.
You're just an aggro deck that has 3 cards then.
Yeah. Awesome. It's the best that we can do with the tools that we're given.
So bad. So bad. Maybe you can use the rifle. I'll have to think.
Also, that was something that I was thinking of. Something that maybe makes Cavdane even that much worse. I think he only has access to Talishar. Because it's the only weapon that he's allowed to play.
But that new card that I talked about, you can give Talishar Go Again to break it faster.
You can give it Go Again. Toss it out even quicker.
Yep, give that Talishar Go Again. Do it.
That's Cavdane, drop it like it's hot.
Yep, exactly. Break it like you're playing Breath of the Wild. Do it.
It's like that scene in Lord of the Rings when Aragorn picks up the Morgul blade and it just dissolves in his hand. That's literally gonna be Talishar.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so rusty.
Yeah, it got Thanos snapped. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah. So all in all, I think that was like there are a lot of other questions that people did submit on Twitter, but I think just incidentally we touched on a lot of what they were asking. Like somebody here, your boy Kylito also asked, do you think the rise of Commoner is in part a response to the price of competitive cards, especially equipment? I think it's a yes and a no.
Yeah,
I think that interest in Commoner is probably motivated by other formats maybe having too high of a barrier of entry to people, but I think its existence as a whole is just something that naturally happens in card games that have like a separate rarity system, where people will want to do that because it's still a constructed format, but if people really like you know, it's not exactly draft, but it's like a little bit closer in terms of maybe average power level to a draft format. So there's interest there. You know, maybe that's not 100% it, but I think that it just, the existence of it was sort of just an inevitability, and the interest, you know, it could be based on price. It could just be based on people wanting to play this sort of thing. Because, I mean, especially if you look at Magic the Gathering, like Pauper is a format that people have been pushing for official support forever.
Yeah.
And it's the same idea. It's all commons. So it's its own thing.
Yeah, 100%.
It's its own idea.
I mean, like, this is not like meant to be like a flex, but I have every card in the game. Like I can build whatever deck I want, but I still like Commoner. And I still think it's a lot of fun. Like, even though I have all these cards, Commoner's still, it's its own thing, like you said. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, going on to your boy Kylito's comment as well on the fact that the equipment's expensive. So if you look at the equipments that we're working with in Commoner as well, do you think that could be quite experimental as well? Because, you know, we've got the whole sort of iron hide lot as well, which obviously if you got 4 pitch in hand, you can effectively block for 8 on one turn with your whole set of Ironhide stuff. So that could literally kill an aggro player's turn if they're throwing everything at you. But you've got 8 defense on board for 4 pitch, which you can then crack back with. So what do we think about the actual equipments that are available at the moment in Commoner? Do you reckon there's much?
I'm sorry. I keep butting in. I apologize.
No, that's okay.
That's right. Yeah, I was ending a sentence, so yeah, it's fine.
Okay, I'm gonna go. I'll go. Okay, so yes, I think there's a decent amount of stuff to choose from, and I also think that with every new main set that comes out, like Uprising, we're gonna get a nice little handful of new common cards to use. So like with the Classic Battles deck, you have the new chest equipment that you can like just destroy for a resource whenever you want. Well, it's an action, so it's not instant, but still, I think that card's great in both Blitz and in Commoner. You have stuff like Vest of the First Fist. Since there's no bannings, you can play with your cross strap, your hardened cross strap. Like for boots, you still have stuff like Snapdragon Scalers, Mage Master boots. For gloves, you have like Goliath Gauntlet, mostly just Goliath Gauntlet. For head, I find head to be one that I more often than not go to like an Iron Rod or an Ironhide. And I don't like playing Ironhide unless I'm playing at least 2. It just feels bad pitching a card to block for 2. But pitching a card to block for 4 feels a little bit better.
That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking though. You could enter the battle, you know, telegraphing to your opponent that there's going to be one turn where you're not going to be able to damage me because I've got 8 life on board that I can block with at one point. Yeah. So that's what I was thinking anyway. Like a full set of armor. I
mean, depending on your class, you can just rock on up with like some good stuff. Like Warrior, like you have the I forget they're called, the gloves.
Refraction bolters? Well, there's
Gallantry Gold.
Does Warrior? Gallantry Gold. Yeah, Gallantry Gold. So Gallantry Gold is very good.
Yeah, I mean, you can rock up with Gallantry Gold, Refraction bolters, and then 2 Ironhides. And there you have like equipment that blocks really well. I mean, Ironhides. Equipment that blocks really well, and then also you can, use them for their effects.
Yeah, like Refraction bolters is just a good set of feet, and you have access to it in Commoner still. I think the equipment in general in Commoner, the access to equipment is definitely not too bad. I was actually discussing this with the other local judge because there are only 2 of us in Winnipeg. Oh yeah. But we were talking in general about the balance of physical damage versus arcane damage, and something that I find interesting. I mean, it's not an apples to apples comparison in any when you really boil down to it. Like, you can't directly compare the two because for Iron Rot and for things that block physical damage, they wear down over time, but Arcane Barrier you can use basically indefinitely. But I find it interesting that there are so many different options for defending physical damage, because we have like Blade Break, and we have Temper and Battle Worn, and then we have things like Phantasmal Footsteps and Valiant Dynamo, which can block multiple times if you satisfy a requirement. But then for Arcane Barrier, we have Arcane Barrier and Spell Void. Like we have 3 different levels at this point. Yeah, we only have 1, 2, and 3 for Arcane Barrier, and then we also have Spell Void. I think that like there could be a problem with arcane damage in Commoner potentially, just because there are fewer options of like generically playable cards that can help you block Arcane Barrier, or help you block arcane damage rather. But I mean, I think that's more just a comment on my thoughts on Flesh and Blood as a whole and not Commoner as a format. So,
Yeah.
I think arcane damage and Arcane Barrier is still a system in Flesh and Blood that isn't fully realized yet.
There's still a lot of space.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I really feel like they're just showing us the base level of it, right? Because there's like when you think about the classes that can do it, you have Runeblade and you have Wizard, and then maybe a little tiny bit of like Illusionist or whatever, where they have like a little bit of arcane damage here or there.
Yeah.
But like when I think about like what we have coming and what we know we have coming, we do have some other spellcaster type classes, and I can't help but feel that like the whole arcane mechanic will get fleshed out even more in an upcoming set. Like whenever they're like, here's the set that has cleric and necromancer, and then here's all of this other arcane crap, like Arcane Barrier. Maybe the cleric prevents just raw damage instead of doing Arcane Barrier. Like I feel that there's a lot of space here, and I think it's stuff that we'll see in the future.
Yeah, I could absolutely subscribe to that, and I would like to see it, because that's, I don't know, just not like a huge gigantic gripe, but I think it's just interesting that at this very moment it feels like your options for defending against arcane damage are much more limited than for blocking physical. So but yeah, I mean, the game is still coming out, like it's still young, so I think you're absolutely right on the money there.
Yes, for sure.
Absolutely.
But yeah, anyway, I think that should just about wrap us up for our thoughts on Commoner as a whole. I mean, we went pretty deep into it at certain points there.
Into the deep Commoner hole.
Yes, but I mean, again, I think the moral of the story, and hopefully this has come through to you, the dear viewer, or listener, I suppose, because it's a podcast, but that, I think it's absolutely worth a shot, and I think that it's, a great way to start to experience the game without having to put all that much effort into it. I'm sure if there's somebody local, like if you don't currently play Flesh and Blood, but you know somebody who does, you could potentially ask them, if they don't already play Commoner, like, hey, do you want to put together a couple Commoner decks with the bulk that you ostensibly have? Because every Flesh and Blood player has infinite bulk. And then you could try it out. Or you could, if you're the player, you could reach out to some of your friends that you play other games with and say, hey, like, I put together these decks, like, do you want to try? I think that just the fact that it's a foothold, a starting point, is really valuable. The balance of it right now, if you wanted to spike it really hard, you can, but if you're trying to get people into a game, you want to show them how fun it is as a whole. Like they can get to that level on their own, but nobody goes to an event or to somebody's house and it's like, if you were trying to show somebody Yu-Gi-Oh for the first time and you gave them the Yu-Gi starter deck from like 1999 or 2002 or whatever it was, and then you roll up with a fully realized, like 100% ghost rare, fully tuned deck, like, yeah, that is the top end of what you can play in Yu-Gi-Oh, but it's not going to be fun for them. So that's another consideration that I think needs to be made.
Bill, are you telling me that I shouldn't roll up with an Azalea and a Briar deck and be like, here you go, this is an Azalea deck, and I'm going to be playing Briar, and let's have some fun.
I mean, if that's your prerogative, man, then I cannot stop you.
You can also substitute Azalea for Levia, or Datadol, or Cavdane.
Yeah.
And you can substitute Briar for what, like Kasai or Ira.
Yeah. Yeah, like there's again, like can you play it super super competitively? Yes, and I think that is inherently going to be a benefit. After there are some amount of considerations made for the balance in general, because there will be cards that are overperforming, but as it is right now, the utility of it to me, is a format that is at its core very fun, very interactive. You're playing Flesh and Blood in a style that, you know, is more accessible, but it doesn't feel that much like, it doesn't feel like a huge departure from how Flesh and Blood plays when you actually have full fleshed out decks. It is still real. Like, you're still having, it's still interactive. You're still having like really powerful turns and stuff like that back and forths, just with commons instead. So yeah, I really appreciate it as a format, and it will get further actualized as it becomes more official. But yeah, I think we can all agree it's just a good time.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, I was just gonna. I know this is gonna elongate the conversation a little bit, but
Fine.
I was just like, if you're that person who like wants to get someone into the game, you can literally, with Commoner, you can literally just show them a list of the heroes and be like, which one do you like the most? And then just build them that deck and be like, here you go, here's a Commoner deck.
Yeah.
And then build a deck that like matches equally against it, and then like that's like an amazing way to, you know, learn the game and introduce a new player.
Yeah. That's exactly how I got a bunch of my friends in. I just built a bunch of like, it wasn't actually Commoner, but I think it was like 10 rare like budget decks of a bunch of different classes, and I just showed them to people and was like, hey, who of these do you think looks the coolest? That was it. Like, that's how, to me, that's where you start with Flesh and Blood. If you know absolutely nothing, you look at the heroes and you're like, Katsu looks like a cool dude because he's a ninja and I like ninjas. That's all of the consideration that needs to be made.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on future episodes as well, when we speak about our Flesh and Blood experiences for the week, I will be able to, you know, maybe comment on experiences that I'm going to have when I'm starting this thing, because I'm going to be starting with this format.
Yeah.
So yeah, obviously, stay tuned for the future ones as well with regards to that, because yeah, I think it's a fantastic way to introduce people, as we've said multiple times on this podcast today. So yeah, definitely
make it into call it like Az's Commoner Corner or something.
Yeah, that sounds quite good.
Yeah,
come into my corner.
Yep.
maybe don't, especially if you follow him on Twitter and you see him drinking alcohol out of a shoe. Maybe his corner needs to be somewhere that you.
Speaking of which,
yes. This is me leading into something else that we're implementing for this, which I think we touched on very briefly in the last episode, was to end these episodes off as just like a nice, you know, fun send off to sort of wrap everything together. We are putting in a segment called the Arsenal, which, of course, as any Flesh and Blood player knows, is the end of your turn. And I think that matches up well with this being the end of the episode. So what this is going to be, it's going to be, you know, we're going to rotate every week, but we're going to throw it to one of the members to just talk about something cool, just something that they really want to talk about, whether it be, you know, a new hobby that you're getting into or something cool that happened to you this week, maybe outside of Flesh and Blood. Just keeping it nice and breezy and open, and you know, ending off on a positive note, because sometimes we can.
Positive note, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe today excluded, but we'll see.
Debaucherous one, more like.
I love it.
But yeah, so for this week, for the first ever Arsenal, we are kicking it over to Az. What do you got to put in your arsenal today?
So yeah, Az is known for drinking all sorts of things on different podcasts and what have you, but this time it was out of a shoe. Yeah. So I just had a little weekend away with some friends in Bristol, which is a nice little city in the UK, one of the most vibrant cities in the UK, southwest. Lots of diverse characters there as well, which is great. Lots of game shops which we visited. And of course, great nightlife as well in Bristol. I used to live there. I used to be in a band and stuff, so I used to play a lot of gigs there and that. And we went to a metal bar.
Hell yeah.
We was having some drinks and stuff. And my mate got an ale which was called Unicorn Tears. He tasted it and it was just like, this is absolutely disgusting. Have a bit of this, Az. And I was just like, yeah, all right, give it here then. I had a swig and I was just like, that is absolutely vile. Tastes like Marmite in a glass. I was just like, mate, I would rather drink out of my shoe than have another swig of that. And he was like, go on then. And I was like, okay. And then that was it. That was the challenge. So I poured my sort of lovely cider with a dash of blackcurrant into my Vans trainer and and drunk it out of the shoe. and then immediately put it back on afterwards, like nothing had happened.
Oh, that was my first question, man. Like, I saw the picture on Twitter, and I'm like, I had two questions.
Yeah.
One, is that a real shoe? And two, like, did you put that shoe like back on your foot? Like, did you take?
I did indeed.
Did you put that? Did you take off your sock and put it back on, or are you just like, nah, sock is gonna be just covered in liquor now?
The bad thing is, right, I wasn't wearing any socks either.
Oh God.
I got some.
I was wearing Vans with no socks.
So
That's a squishy experience.
Yeah.
A nice foot marinade.
Nice, yeah. But
Yeah.
it's an experience. I mean, I think it comes. I think there's a bit of culture behind a shoe. Well, the actual action of drinking out of a shoe is known as a shoey. And
Of course.
I think because Tall Timmy quoted on it was a video. The video's on Twitter was at Go Again Gaming which obviously we can plug that in a bit when we go around. But yeah, it's on Twitter, and Tall Timmy's Australian, and he knew what it was. So I think it does come from Australia. I think it is an Australian thing or British thing. But I think Formula One drivers do it as like a as a celebration. They drink out of their boots, which had obviously been pressing on the driving pedal the whole time during the race.
That makes sense.
I think it's something to do with that, but people can correct us in the comments or what have you as to where it comes from, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, just a good time in general, like
just a good time in general, mate. Yeah, it's good fun.
But
yeah. There's a few people saying on there, oh, we need to do some shoeies when you come over to the US or whatever it is. I'm like, yeah, we could do some shoeies.
Yeah,
we are.
Depends on how drunk I am, I guess, is going to be how open
we'll
I am
get you
to
there.
that.
Yeah. I'm certain at some point I'm gonna be coerced into a shoey, and it's gonna be during a game of Commoner Cavdane versus Datadol, and it's just gonna be the lowest point of my existence.
Oh, that'd be ridiculous.
Rock bottom, man.
Yeah. But anyway, thanks so much for sharing, that's a fantastic story. And a great way to cap this off. I guess officially, we'll go around and just talk a little bit about where you can find us if you're interested in, in hearing more about this or hearing our personal thoughts. I'm Bill from the Spike Feeders. As I mentioned earlier, you can find me on Twitter. My personal account is @BillTSF. And then also there's the main channel, there's the main Twitter, which I don't really post on or anything, but if you wanted to check out our channel, we're mostly Magic the Gathering. We do have a Flesh and Blood channel as well called Spike Feeders FAB, but you can find us basically everywhere at the Spike Feeders. And where can we find you, my good friend?
Yeah, so I'm on Go Again Gaming on YouTube. Recently hit 500 subscribers.
Yo.
Yay, go me!
Hell yeah!
So thanks for a little share on that, and I appreciate that a lot. As I mentioned just a moment ago about the shoey video, you can find me on Twitter at Go Again Gaming AZ, where I post a lot of things. Mainly just stupid videos like that, and a couple of little Photoshop edits and stuff, and random thoughts on Flesh and Blood. So yeah, definitely go check that out as well.
Absolutely.
And my name is Kellen, also known as Red Zone Rogue. You can find me at Red Zone Rogue everywhere. YouTube.com/Red Zone Rogue, at Red Zone Rogue on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Though I don't use Instagram and Facebook as much as Twitter and YouTube. So that's where you can find my stuff. Oh, actually, I currently still post videos to Channel Fireball, and I would sometimes do coverage for Flesh and Blood. So yeah.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
nice. Also, I just realized this now, but when I kicked it over to I called him my good friend, and then was completely silent for leading into Kel's. Kelly,
it's okay.
No, I think that was my fault because I was just silent after I said my part. Maybe I should have leaded it on to Kel. So that's just me being also.
Yeah, you know what? If it means that I don't have to accept the blame for it, then yeah.
I should just pick up the cues better, honestly.
No. I mean, we don't have the like for a peek behind the curtain for you guys at home. This is just straight up audio, just Discord call that we're all recording. So we don't have the ability to like look at each other and see the cues there where it's like, oh, I'm looking like I'm done talking or whatever. So we do kind of talk over each other sometimes. Maybe we should do that at some point and just see each other. Maybe that might make the conversations a little bit smoother. But anyway, outside of that,
Jim said we could.
That means I have to put on pants for this.
Well, I mean, unless you're unless you're webcamming just your lower half.
I'll have it angled down just so everyone can see.
Yeah, that's the money shot right there. Kel, where can the viewers at home or the listeners at home find this podcast and all of our other episodes?
Yes, the Living Legends podcast, anchor.fm. You can find us there. Also on Spotify and now on Google Podcasts. If there are any other places you would like us to be available, just let me know. But I would also include an RSS link in the description down below as well to the video, and you should be able to find it hopefully on whatever podcast service that you are using. But at the very least, if you can't, go on over to the website, youtube.com/redzonerogue, to this video, and I will have the RSS link in the description of all of the videos as well. So hopefully you're able to find it and you're able to listen.
Yeah. And
if you can't find us on any of those or whatever your platform is, just let us know, and we should be able to get it uploaded. But we'll see what we can do with that.
Yeah, just
absolutely. Yeah,
DM.
Feel free to hit us up.
Whatever.
Yeah. Did you mention at one point as well that we were on Apple Podcasts, or was that something that you didn't end up doing?
No. We are on Apple Podcasts.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts are the three main ones right now, and I think it covers a lot of bases currently. Yeah. But like I said, if anyone wants us on anything in particular, just let us know. Like if you can't get the RSS working, so there's like Stitcher. I'm looking to get us on Google Podcasts too. So
yeah,
nice,
absolutely. But anyway, I think that will just about wrap it up for this episode of the Living Legends podcast. Today, obviously, we talked all about Commoner, and it was a fantastic time. I do want to say thank you both very much for joining me. And I mean, it's just a great time. I think we had some really good discussions here.
Yeah, thank you.
And next week, if I'm the podcast host, I promise it won't all be about shoeies.
That's a tough one. Don't make promises you can't keep.
You heard it here first. Az is the host next week, and it's going to be all about shoeies.
Yeah, the shoey episode.
Yep, exactly.
Anyway, thank you all so much for sticking with us and hanging out. And stay well and stay safe. And we will see you next week for another episode.
Yeah. See you later, everyone.
Peace.